Amen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is good to be here. It is good to see everyone who is here this morning. We're thankful for you all being here. We're thankful for your presence, your attendance. Today, if you're visiting for the first time, we appreciate so very much you being here with us. And we want to say thank you for being here with us. And we want to say that we are glad that you're here with us on this particular day. And we want to let you know that you are an honored and esteemed guest here at the Easthaven Church of Christ. You know, in recent months, because of the extreme positions that Alabama and Georgia have taken concerning abortion, the subject of abortion has become a hot button issue. And everybody has weighed in on the subject. Celebrities, politicians, women, men, doctors. But I think we ought to let God say something. Amen. We ought to let God say something. It's all right, concerning life. Because at the heart of the matter, that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to how we deem and how we value life, the importance of life, the sanctity of life. And what we find out about God, God has some ways, some views about him that are unlike man. In Proverbs chapter 6, our text, Proverbs chapter 6 and verse number 16. The proverb writer says, these 6 things doth the Lord hate. Those 6 things are mentioned in verses 12 through 14. These 6 things doth the Lord hate. Yea, 7 are an abomination unto him. A proud look, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked imagination, feet that be swift and run into mischief. Then he says, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren.
Yes.
God hates these things. One thing you know about God that you can walk away today with from this text, God is a hater. You know, sometimes we use that as a catchphrase. You know, he ain't nothing but a hater. She ain't nothing but a hater. Well, God is a hater. And there are some things that God hates. Yeah. And I believe that if we're going to be God's people, because we're made in God's image, we're made in the similitude and the likeness of God, if God hates some things, then there are some things that we ought to hate. And so this morning we're talking about the importance of life in regards to this idea of abortion. I don't know if you all saw the news last week, but our own brother, gospel preacher, John D. Berry, representative of Memphis, he is taking a position. He's for life. I'm for life. Because God is for life. And we all ought to be for life. And people have come out of the woodwork to call him an extremist. They have called for his job. But I believe that the way that we ought to view life is the same way God views life. Let's look at it carefully, because this is a very important topic. A couple of things we need to consider. God's views are not our views.
No, sir.
That's the first thing we need to establish. God does not view life and the world and morality the same way we do. He don't see it through the same lens. God values life.
Yeah.
And then in the third place, we just got to call it bluntly and plainly what it is. God considers abortion murder. Now, mind you, as we look at this, I don't know where anybody in this room stands on this subject. I don't know where you stand. The reason why we have to qualify that, because I know for a fact that there are members of the church who are for it. So I don't know where anybody stands, but I know where God stands. And we ought to stand on the same side that God stands on this subject.
That's it.
And believe it or not, you know people, I know people who have been affected by this topic, who have had abortions. So we need to see what God says about this. Because it's going to become more and more prevalent as we get up to 2020. What does God say concerning the importance of life? First of all, God's views are not our views. God does not view life through the same lens as humanity. He's already established that. Look at Isaiah chapter 55, verse number 8, beginning. God told Isaiah what man needs to understand. And we can understand that right off the bat, then we're better apt to deal with life. If we can understand, if we can ever get through our minds how God views the world and what he thinks about the world based on what he's revealed about the world, then we can better be equipped to live in the world. Isaiah 55, verse number 8. We talk about the importance of life. Verse number 8 says what?
For my thoughts
Uh-huh.
are not your thoughts.
God says, my thoughts are not your thoughts.
Neither are your ways my ways.
God
saith
says,
the
neither
Lord.
are your ways my ways. So the first thing that we need to understand in our minds, God says, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways. The reason we ought to establish that, because when you hear people talk about abortion, and they use the word fetus, do understand, they're not using fetus in the way the medical word really understands fetus. They're using fetus to mean no life. But God doesn't view life like that, and we'll see that momentarily. And so God says, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. What else does he say?
For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways.
Man at his highest, at the zenith of his thinking, is still down here in comparison to God. God says, my thoughts are higher than your thoughts. Our ways are higher than your ways. So man at his most intellectual and his most intelligent is still on the ground floor in comparison to God.
Amen.
Yes, sir.
Does not matter how smart a guy become. Does not matter how many degrees he got. He still don't know more than God. If you don't believe me, go and ask Job.
That's it. Right.
In the book of Job, Job thought he could have a day with God where he could question God, and he wanted God to answer him. God said, okay, Job, let's come and talk.
Let's talk.
Pull a seat up.
Let's talk.
Job, you know where the rain come from, Job? You know where the lightning come from, Job? Do you know how the oil and the gold and the iron and how it settle in the earth, Job?
Right.
Man don't know that. At his very best, he's still on the ground floor in comparison to God. So God says, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. He says, my ways and my thoughts are higher than man's. So the reason we need to establish that very early on is because when we look at this subject, the importance of life, and we think about that in connection with abortion, God does not view life the same way that people who are poor view life. We need to consider that. As a matter of fact, when it comes down to life, when it comes down to the world, when it comes down to anything in terms of morality, God and man are on two different wavelengths.
Yes.
You go back to Isaiah chapter 6. In Isaiah chapter 6, in the year that King Uzziah died, Isaiah said he saw the Lord high and holy and lifted up, and his train filled the earth. And then Isaiah said that he saw seraphims, and the seraphim had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew.
Right.
But then Isaiah also saw himself, and he also saw the people. When Isaiah saw the Lord, he says, holy, 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 holy is the Lord of hosts. That's God. God is holy. But in Isaiah 6 and verse number 5, Isaiah says, I'm a man who is undone.
Yeah.
I'm a man of unclean lips. So here's Isaiah in covenant relationship with God, but he still views himself as being unclean and undone. You see how different God and man are?
Yeah.
And so what we need to consider when we talk about God, man and God are different when it comes down to those crucial, important matters of life. But this is what we need to consider. God has an answer for Planned Parenthood. God got an answer. People always talk about parenthood, Planned Parenthood. God got an answer. You know what it's called? It's called abstinence. If you want a Planned Parenthood, and you want to prevent from unborn children being born, it's called abstinence. Look at 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. That's the most simple and effective way not to become pregnant. Amen. And here's the thing. We don't put all the blame on women. We don't put all the blame on women. Because there have been some men who didn't want to take care of children, and so they made women get abortion. They just as guilty.
Yes, sir.
So we don't put all the blame on women. Not only that, what does he say in 1 Thessalonians 4, verse number 3?
For this is the will of God.
This is God's will now.
Even your sanctification.
Even your
That
sanctification.
ye should abstain from fornication.
Paul said this is God's will. If you want to know God's will in order to have a successful life, in order not to have unborn pregnancies, unwanted pregnancy, whatever they may call them, he says this is the will of God, even your sanctification. Abstain from fornication. How do children get here in the first place? Amen. You know, it's time out for people keep slipping on banana peels. Amen.
It's all right. Good.
It's time out for all that. And here's the thing, even from a human standpoint, we understand once. You understand once? Sometimes we give and take twice. But 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you keep doing the same thing and getting the same results. Paul said the answer to that is abstinence.
Amen.
That's the answer to Planned Parenthood. If you don't want children, don't have sex. That's it. That's it. We can solve all of the world problems. We just follow God's way. People sometimes, I don't want this child. I don't want this child right now. The child will get away in my life. We don't have sex.
Amen.
I read an article a couple weeks ago. All these celebrity women who had abortions. And believe it or not, because many times people bring this issue up and they say, well, what about if somebody was raped? In this article, there's about 20 different women, celebrities, you all know them, actresses, musicians, stuff like that. It wasn't because of rape. You know what it was because? Because they couldn't further their career. That's why they had the abortions. So what we need to understand, we always want to go to the extreme, the hypothetical, but the truth of the matter is people have abortion because they don't want to get away with their lives. And so we need to consider the answer to that problem is not to have sex, not to have premarital sex. God has always reserved sex for marriage. That's the answer. 1 Timothy 5, verse number 14, Paul says, I will therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, and give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. That's the answer. So if you want to know how to raise a family, you're going to get married. You find somebody you're going to spend the rest of your life with, then have sex with them all you want to, then you have children.
Amen.
That's the answer. But people don't want to have children, but they want to play.
All right.
And then when playing catch up with them,
That's right.
then they got to do something about it. And so both men and women are responsible, but Paul said God's will is abstain. Just say no. Have to abstain from sex. Not only that, but consider this. God values life. More so than anything else that we need to consider, human life is important to God. That's what we need to consider. Reason being, man is made in the image of God. Genesis 1:26 and 27, God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over everything, the fish, the birds, the cattle, everything that breathing and creeping upon the face of the earth. God said, let them have dominion over that. Who? Those who are made in his image. James 3 and verse number 9, James said, we are made in the similitude of God. That simply means everybody around here walking and talking and breathing got some of God in them. We are made in the image of the Most High God. And so what we need to consider, because of that, we are important. We are more important than we think. Sometimes people get down on themselves. Sometimes people they doubt themselves. But you need to understand this morning, if you are alive and you are a human being, you have value.
Yes.
You have value. You have worth. You have dignity. And so why? Because we are made in the image of God. We ain't made in the image of no animals.
Amen.
We're not made in the image of anything in nature. We're made in the image of the God who created the world. And because of that, God values life. What I want you to consider now, first of all, I want you to know this. God is responsible for life. Look at Ezekiel chapter 18. Ezekiel 18, verses 1 through 4. I want you to consider these passages. Ezekiel 18, so we understand how God feels about life. Ezekiel 18, verse number 1.
The word of the Lord came unto me again, saying, what mean ye that you use this proverb concerning the land of Israel?
Now what happened in Ezekiel day, the people that came up with this proverb, this saying,
All right.
and everybody was using it, everybody was running with it. It's kind of like today, people take stuff about God or something that may be related to God, they'll say it, and it sounds good, and everybody will run with it. It's kind of like you hear people say sometimes, well, you know what, God ain't going to put no more on you that you can't bear. You not realize God ain't never said that? But everybody using it. Everybody says it sounds fair and equitable, but God never said that. And how do you know if it's God put it on you or not? It may be a result of your own bad decisions.
Amen.
It may just be life.
Yes.
And so, but God never said that. So sometimes people can take things about God that are related to God. They can say, and it sounds good. It sounds right. It sounds like, something I can work with. And it may be something God never said. But that's what was happening in this day.
Okay.
They took a saying that everybody came up with and they ran with it. Well, what's the saying?
The fathers have eaten sour grapes.
They said the fathers have eaten sour grapes.
And the children's teeth.
But the children's teeth are messed up. Now, you know as well as I know, that ain't true. Y'all know how many times we got to go to the dentist? Because we the ones eating the candy, the cookies, the ice cream, all the sweet stuff, and it mess up our own teeth. But they were saying the fathers ate the sour grape, and then the children's teeth are messed up. That's not so, brothers and sisters. And so God had to fix their thinking, and what does he say in verse number 4?
As I live, said the Lord, God, ye shall not have occasion anymore to use this proverb.
God says, you're never going to be able to use this proverb anymore. Why? Because I'm going to teach the word of God more perfectly.
Behold, all souls are mine.
That's what I want.
As the soul
God says, all souls are mine. Even those in the womb.
Yes, yes.
All souls belong to God. They belong to God. Somebody say, well, it's the woman's choice. It's her body. That's a lie. It's the child's body. It's their soul. She's carrying life in the womb. And we're going to see that. So it's not her body. It's somebody else's body in her body. All souls belong to God. And ultimately, her body, her soul belongs to God. So it's not about her body. It's about God.
All right.
Not only that, but look at Jeremiah chapter 1 and verse number 5. Jeremiah chapter 1, excuse me. Look at Hebrews 12, verse number 9. The Hebrew writer, once again, see, when we think about this subject, we got to consider God. Hebrews 12, verse number 9, the Hebrew writer says what? Furthermore,
we have had father of our flesh.
We have had earthly fathers
which corrected us. And we gave them rest.
Now here's the point the Hebrew writer is making. He makes a connection between our earthly fathers and how they demanded respect out of us. And how did they get that respect out of us? They applied the Board of Education to the seat of learning.
There you go.
Yes.
They chastised us. They whipped us. They made us go and get the belt and the switches. And in so doing that, they demanded and it yielded respect from us to them. We got some fathers, we got some men that we can rely on, that we can talk to, but when we was growing up, they got after us, didn't they? Now, as a result of that, understand that principle, he says, furthermore, we've had fathers of our flesh, which what? Which corrected us, but what?
Corrected us, and we gave them rest.
We respect them men. We respect them men to the highest. What else does it say?
Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirit and live?
Now, because we understand that principle of respecting our human fathers, should we not much more give God respect? And who is God? God is the God of all spirits. He says all souls belong to me, and he's also the God of all spirits. So when we think about the life that's in that womb, that life, that precious life, that precious soul, that precious spirit, that belongs to God. And so what we need to consider is life that's there in the womb. If you don't believe it, I want everybody to go to 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse number 15. We're going to trace this word. So we can understand, because see, I know this topic going to come up on your job, or has come up on the job, within your family and friends and the people that you know. And people want to know how you feel about it.
Yeah.
It's not a matter of how I feel about it. How does God feel about it?
Amen.
What God says.
2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse number 15. I want you to mark this word. 2 Timothy 3:15. I want everybody to turn to it. Paul says, write to Timothy, and that from a child. Thou hast known the Holy Scripture, which are able to make you wise in salvation through faith which is in Christ Jesus. Y'all see the word child there? Comes from a Greek term, brephos. The word brephos, depending on the context, it always means life. Whether an unborn child, whether a child in the womb, whether an infant, whether a young child. So let's trace this word and let's see if there's life in the womb. Remember this word now, child. Reference, unborn child, child in the womb, child outside of the womb, a child in general. Look at Luke chapter 1. Y'all remember when Mary and Elizabeth were both pregnant,
Yes,
6 months apart? Luke chapter 1, verse number 41.
And it came to pass that when Elizabeth heard the salutation of Mary,
Now here's Mary, the mother of Jesus, coming to visit her cousin Elizabeth. Notice what happens.
the babe leaped in her womb.
Now, the babe leaped in her womb. Elizabeth is carrying John the Baptist.
All right.
And she calls him a babe. It's the same word child in 2 Timothy 3 and verse number 15. You know why I said it like that? Because even though John was still in the womb, there's still life.
Oh, yeah.
When Mary came to visit her cousin Elizabeth, John the Baptist in the womb was jumping for joy.
Yes, sir. All right.
Because he knew his mama's cousin was going to be carrying the Savior, of which he was going to prepare the way for. You did old preach sometimes. John, what you jumping for? John jumping because salvation finna come near, and he going to prepare the way for Jesus. That's his cousin he's jumping for.
Oh, yeah. Amen. Yes, sir.
But he said the babe leaped in the womb. He jumped in the womb. Verse number 44, what does it say?
For lo, as soon as the voice of the salutation sounded in my ear, the babe leaped in my womb for joy.
John was rejoicing. John was excited. John was leaping because he knew salvation was coming. Salvation for all of mankind. John was jumping for joy, even in the womb. That's the kind of impact Jesus had on the world. That in the womb, his cousin, John the Baptist, was jumping for joy, and he hadn't even been born yet.
Right.
Look at Luke chapter 2 and verse number 12. That's the same word child in 2 Timothy 3:15. Luke 2 and verse number 12.
And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger.
A babe, that's Jesus after he was born. Once again, that's life. Verse 16.
And they came with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger.
Same word. Child. Reference. In the womb, out of the womb, as a fetus, as an unborn child. Brothers and sisters, I think we get the picture. When we see this word breakfast, child, in the New Testament, that means life whether in the womb or out of the womb. So when I think about God and I think about this topic of abortion, we need to consider that God values life.
Yeah.
In Luke chapter 18 and verse number 15, you remember Jesus was out there teaching? He was out there teaching and doing his discourse. And notice what the people brought to Jesus. They brought unto Jesus what? Infants. That's the same word, child, in 2 Timothy 3:15. So whether it's an infant, whether it's a child in the womb, whether it's outside of the womb, that's life. And so what we need to consider, God values life. What God sees in the womb are children. But maybe, I think what has happened? What has happened with mankind? I think we really have, in our minds, really actually thought, is bread in the oven. Sometimes you see a woman pregnant, say, oh, she got a bun in the oven, all it's life in the womb. That's what that is. That's what she carrying. She carrying life. She ain't carrying bread, she carrying life.
Yes, yes.
And so we need to consider that God sees life in the womb. Better yet, to further this point, when you look at prophecy, the prophecy of the Old Testament helps us to appreciate how God values life. Go back to Jeremiah chapter 1 and verse number 5. Jeremiah chapter 1 and verse number 5. Notice what God says about Jeremiah.
Behold, before I formed thee in the womb.
God says two things now. I was the one who formed you in the womb. Because it goes back to the fact all souls belong to God. And God is the Father of spirits. So God tells Jeremiah, now he's a grown man now. He says, before you were born, Jeremiah, I was the one who put you in the womb. You don't think God values life? Before I formed in the womb, what happened?
I knew thee, and before you came forward out of the womb, I sanctified thee.
God said, Jeremiah, before you knew yourself, I knew you. Before your mama knew you, I knew you. Before your father knew you, I knew you. Before your family knew you, I knew you. You know why? Because God saw life there in the womb. God says, before you were formed He said, before you knew anything, Jeremiah, I knew you, and I sanctified thee a prophet unto the nations. God values the sanctity of human life. Not only that, but look at Isaiah chapter 44. Y'all remember God used this man by the name of Cyrus? Isaiah 44, verse number 28. What does he say there?
Thus said of Cyrus, he is my shepherd, and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid.
Now Cyrus was responsible for allowing God's people to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. The only problem with this passage is the mere fact Cyrus wasn't even born yet. It will be another 150 years before he is born. But yet it's still 150 years prior, God says, he coming, I know his name, and I know what he's going to do. Amen. So you know what that tells me? We talk about centuries before, centuries prior, God saw life. So who knows what that child in the womb can do if you give it a chance to live? All right. Yep. God saw this 150 years before Cyrus was even born. And God says, I know who he is, I know his name, and I know what he's going to do. You can say the same thing about Jesus in Isaiah chapter 7. When God says, you know what, a virgin shall conceive and bear seed. Right. We're talking about that was 700 years before it happened. Right. So we're talking about centuries where God sees life in the womb and he sees the person and what they're going to do once they come into the world. That's what we need to consider. How much God values human life in the third place. Say what you want. Call it what you want. Men and women say abortion. God calls it murder. That's what it is. As plain as day, it's murder. In Proverbs chapter 6, our text, God calls it the shedding hands that shed innocent blood. And God has always been a God who hates, who detests, and who loathes murder. Go back to Genesis chapter 9. Go back to the beginning of time. Y'all remember, ever since the beginning of time, God has always hated murder. Look at Genesis chapter 9. This is concerning Noah. Genesis chapter 9, verse number 6.
Whoso sheddeth man blood, by man shall his blood be shed.
God says, whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. Two things stand out. Number one, this is even before the law of Moses. That God hated murder. So before God said in Exodus 20, verse number 13, thou shalt not kill, even during the time of the patriarch, murder was wrong. That's why Cain understood that after he killed his brother, if somebody finds him, they might kill him. Right. So even since the dawn of creation, God has always hated murder. God didn't even take a man to show us that he hated murder. Before then, God hated murder. The Ten Commandments did not come until 400 or 500 years later. But God has always hated it. Not only that, the second thing that stands out, when you look at this, Genesis 9, verse number 6, God has always been the God of capital punishment. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And a whole lot of Christians don't believe in that. They say, you know, that's unethical. According to who? Let me tell you right now, I'm for it. I'm for it. Because God is for it. Romans chapter 13. I believe that whoever admits God, they ought to have an act for it. I believe he ought to be put the butt from his house. Because God is for capital punishment. Yeah. I know some preachers, they don't believe in that. See, I'm for the same stuff God is for. That's all right. All right. God says back in the beginning of time, whoso shed a man's blood, his blood shall be shed. That's capital punishment. You can't just go around here taking people's lives, killing people, shooting people while they're on Interstate 240 innocently. You can't do that. You can't just go around and killing people because you don't like them. God hates murder. Yes. Years ago, before I ever knew anything about Memphis, came to Memphis, father was a truck driver, used to come to Memphis all the time. I remember back in the day, y'all know I'm telling the truth when I say this, Memphis had a nigga M-Time. Didn't stand for Memphis. One time, Memphis was the murder capital of the world. That's a terrible reputation to have. To be billed as the murder capital of the world. But guess what? God got a plan for murderers. And God says capital punishment is the answer. Y'all look at me like 8 and verse number 11. It's not up there, but let me give it to you. Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and verse number 11. What does Solomon say in verse number 11? Ecclesiastes 8 and verse number 11.
Because sinners
Because sentence
against
an evil work is not done what?
is not executed speedily. Therefore the heart of the Son of Man is fully set in them.
You know why people keep killing people? Because our laws are so lax. You go out here and take out a whole congregation of people and they go and send you to jail for 30 years.
Amen.
On your taxpaying dime.
That's right.
Somebody can come here and wipe out this whole congregation. They got to go to prison for the rest of their life, and then our family members got to pay for it. They got to have health care, insurance.
That's good. That's good.
That didn't happen in biblical time. You kill somebody then, they killed you too. I heard of a rumor, and I got to check it out. They say in Roman times, and I need to verify this. They say in Roman times, if you kill somebody, you know what the Romans did? If you went to court and you were found guilty of killing somebody, what the Romans would do, they would take a murderer who's been accused and who's been found guilty, and they would take the murderer and they would strap the murderer to the person who they killed. Face to face, mouth to mouth.
Okay.
And they will put you outside of the city of Rome. And they will keep you there tied up to that deceased person's body, their corpse, until you die. Let me ask you a question. You don't think that would deter crime?
Oh yeah. Thank quiet. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Solomon said the reason why crime is going up, the reason why crime keeps growing and growing and growing is because sinners against an evil work is not executed speedily. That men's heart are set to do evil. Why? Because they feel like they can get away with it. But let me tell you something. You go to some other countries, they don't tolerate that stuff. They don't put up with that stuff. You go to certain countries right now, you can spit on the ground. They'll keep you over there for 6 months. But our laws are so lax in America that you can take somebody's life, as important as life is, and still get off. God has always hated murder. That's why he says in Exodus chapter 20, he told his people, thou shalt not kill. Literally it means thou shalt not do no murder.
Right.
You can't just go around and take people's lives innocently without cause. So he says, don't kill, don't do murder. God has always hated it. Why are we saying all of this? Because at the end of the day, that's what abortion is.
That's it. Murder.
It's murder.
Murder.
It's taking the life of an unborn child away from them. Better yet, what I want you to consider.